Okay, we're going to have a look at types of magnetic storage. So what I have here first is an old type of magnetic storage. You don't see these around very often now. This is called a floppy disk. It stores about 1.4 megabytes of information. And if I pull this protective sheath out of the way, it stores the information on a disk inside. And it's floppy, hence the name floppy disk. Now we also have a more common type of storage that's still around today, which is a hard drive. Now hard drives come in different shapes and sizes. We have this quite large shape here. This is what you would find in a desktop computer. We have small hard drives like this that you tend to find in a laptop computer or some portable devices. And you don't see these very often now, but this is my first iPod. The reason my first iPod is so thick is that it has a hard drive inside of it. And the reason it had a hard drive in is when this came out, it was the only way of having portable storage. There wasn't really anything else that was an option. Now, if I open up this hard drive, you'll see inside is a spinning metal disc called a platter. And then we've got an arm here with a sensor on the end. And this will move around so it touches any part of the platter. If I move the surface around, and the little sensor on the end here can read and write on the disc. And if you imagine you were to look at this under a microscope, what you'd see is lots of little points. And each of those points is a magnet. And this little sensor here can read whether that part of the disk is positive or negative. And it can also change it. So it allows us to write information. And it does all of this incredibly quick. And if you imagine we store information in computers generally in binary, so positive or negative, 1 or 0. Now, the big advantage of hard drives is they can store a large amount of information. Compared to most types of storage, they are the cheapest and the cheapest per megabyte. And also, like I said, store a large amount of information. So a standard hard drive these days is about 500 gigabytes. And you can easily get hard drives up to a couple of terabytes without spending too much money. Now, the downside of hard drives is they are quite delicate. So if you were to drop them, these components inside can quite easily break. They don't work particularly well when they're moving around, which was the problem with my iPod. So you got running with this and you jumped it around, it tended to stop working. They're also susceptible to magnetic interference. So if you ever put one of these near a magnet, it will potentially wipe out all that information inside. Now there is another type of magnetic storage that we still use, and that's actually tapes. So I have here an old tape. This one's actually out of a camcorder. And tapes store information using a long spool of tape. Now originally these were used for kind of movies and listening to audio. And in fact we don't really use them for that anymore, but we do use them for backups. And we use it for backup is whilst this is a very slow method of getting information on or off, it's a very cheap way of storing a very, very large amount of information. And that's useful for backups because we don't use backups very often. But it does allow us, especially in schools, to back up servers onto one of these and put them in a safe place. We can have quite a few of these. But again, they're susceptible to magnetic interference, so you've got to find a safe place to put them. And also, a very long period of time, they're going to lose the information that's on them. So if you leave them sat in a drawer, potentially these can lose their information. So in summary, magnetic storage, generally cheap, you store a large amount of information, but susceptible to losing your data to damage to components in a hard drive or to magnetic interference. So great in desktop computers where it's going to stay still and it's not going to be put near a big magnet. Not brilliant in portable, although you can get hard drives with a USB interface, portable ones. Now they're great for carrying a large amount of information around, but if you drop it, you risk losing your information.